16th, 2024. I'll call that to order here. So the invocation and pledge of allegiance will be led by Councilmember Jones this evening.
Join me in prayer, please. Dear Heavenly Father, give us the strength to face the challenges ahead of us with courage and the faith to overcome them through your guidance. Amen.
Amen. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Kaler. Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Reesner.
Here.
Councilmember Snee. Councilmember Thacker.
Here.
Councilmember Hayes.
Here.
And Councilmember Herman.
Here.
Let the record show 5 of the 7 council members are present this evening. Minutes from December 2nd, 2024, regular and committee of the whole were distributed. Any questions, corrections, or deletions? If not, the minutes will stand approved as presented. We are now under committee reports. Finance Committee, Councilmember Reesner.
No report, Madam President.
Thank you. Law and Community Planning, anyone from that committee have a report this evening?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. There is a report. The Law and Community Planning Committee met in City Chambers on December 10th, 2024, starting at 5:15 p.m. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss Mayor's request for legislation 24-45, an adoption of a hazard mitigation plan, as well as any other business to come before the committee. Attending were committee members John Kaler, John Hayes, and Dennis Snee. Also attending were Mayor Lee Wilkinson, Law Director Zachary Fowler, City Administrator Nick Dutro, and EMA Administrator John Spar. City Administrator Nick Dutro explained that a hazard mitigation plan must be adopted every 5 years. The current hazard mitigation plan is set to expire, and a new one must be adopted by the end of the year. Therefore, Mr. Dutro requested that the adoption of the new hazard mitigation plan be considered an emergency and that the City Council's 3 reading rule be suspended. EMA Administrator John Spar explained that while the Tiffin City Council and other county governmental agencies must adopt a hazard mitigation plan, any such plan must be approved by FEMA. Should the plan not be adopted and timely submitted to FEMA for approval, local governments may miss out on available grants. A hazard mitigation plan is a strategic document that helps reduce the risk of future disasters to people and property in Ohio. The plan assesses the risks in the area, including natural disasters, technological hazards, and human-caused hazards. It also identifies the people and property that are at risk. The plan creates a strategy to reduce the risk, including goals, objectives, and an action plan. The plan includes a process for reviewing and updating the plan. FEMA requires a hazard mitigation plan when applying for certain types of non-emergency disaster assistance. After a discussion, Councilmember Dennis Snee moved to recommend that the city law director draft legislation to adopt the hazard mitigation plan and declare an emergency. Councilmember John Hayes seconded the motion, and the motion passed 3-0. And with no other business to discuss, the meeting adjourned at 5:40 p.m. And that concludes our report.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions on that report? All right, thank you. Materials and Equipment, Councilmember Jones.
No reports, Madam President.
Personnel and Labor Relations, Councilmember Hayes.
No report, Madam President.
Recreation and Public Property, anyone from that committee have a report this evening?
No report, Madam President.
Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers, Councilmember Thacker.
Yes, thank you. A Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee meeting was held on December 9th, 2024 at 5:15 p.m. in Council Chambers. Attending were committee members Cheyenne Thacker, Aaron Jones, Kevin Reesner, and Dennis Snee, along with City Administrator Nick Dutro, City Engineer Matt Watson, Law Director Zachary Fowler, and Mayor Lee Wilkinson. Thacker called the meeting to order. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss Mayor's request for legislation 24-46, road and bridge levy renewal, and 24-47, Court Street streetscape, and any other business that may come before them. Watson gave the committee information on the Court Street streetscape project. The project updates include repaving and striping of Court Street, sidewalk and curb replacement, and installing decorative bricks and light poles. Council needs to give authority to the city administrator, prepare plans and specifications, advertise for and receive bids, recommend and execute a contract for the Court Street streetscape project. Reesner motioned to have the law director prepare legislation and add an emergency. Snee seconded the motion. The motion passed 4-0. Watson gave the committee information on the proposed road and bridge levy renewal. The renewal would make the current levy a permanent levy. The proposed levy renewal would keep the rate the same as the current levy. Making it a permanent levy would also allow for the city to do strategic, long-term planning for our roads and bridges. In the past, it has made the city more competitive to go after matching funds for grants and allowed the city to pay for the Ellis Street Bridge with no loans. Fowler said he would be working with the city's tax attorney to prepare the legislation and gave the committee guidance on state auditor's guidance for campaigning for the levy. Snee motioned to have the law director prepare legislation. Reesner seconded the motion. The motion passed 4-0. With no further business, the committee adjourned at 5:44 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions on that committee report? All right. So it takes us to economic development and downtown planning. Councilmember Herman.
No report, Madam President.
All right. Does anyone see the need to schedule a committee of the whole meeting? All right. We are now under reports of the officers. His Honor Mayor Lee Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam President. On the night of December 7th, we had our first nighttime parade for the Christmas parade. It was very
Cold.
well lit up. It was very cold. There was a lot of creative floats and vehicles and parade marchers, and it was really fun to watch. I didn't get to watch a lot of it because I was at the beginning of the parade, but it's what I heard. We had a lot of good feedback from the community on that. We also had the grand opening of the iceless skating rink at Oakley Park, sponsored by Sutton Bank. And we had our first full weekend this past weekend. And so far, there have been a total of 461 skaters.
Wow.
And they're still looking for volunteers and sponsors. Go out, try it out. It is a lot of fun. And people are having a good time. Even in the rain last night, there were people out skating. So
That's cool.
it was very good. Around town, Aqua has work in progress. They're still replacing the lead water lines. Next week, they will continue with replacements on Erie, Wentz, and Tiffin streets. They will also be investigating work on Jackson Street, Fulton, and Hunter. The TU, Tiffin University Building Project at the corner of Clay Street and Sandusky Street, will have a road closed sign coming up for the westbound traffic only on Clay Street at the corner of Sandusky. There will be cones and barrels extending down the center of the roadway, and that's going to begin tomorrow. It will take a minimum of 2 days, so just be patient with that or find an alternate route. And I would also like to read a curb lawn restoration project for our infrastructure. This is from our Public Works Department. So the city is going to fund a curb lawn restoration. So the curb lawn is like the boulevard in between the street and the sidewalk, in between the curb and the sidewalk, where a lot of people have put down stones to increase their parking area, but it also is somewhat harmful to the trees and the underlying infrastructure, if there happens to be infrastructure underneath there. So I'd like to read you a little bit about that. So residents in Tiffin with gravel parking areas in the public right-of-way in front of their residences are encouraged to request removal. So encouraged to request removal of the gravel and replanting with grass through the Public Works Department between now and January 31st, 2025. And restorations will occur like later this spring when it's grass growing season. And the purpose of this program is threefold: to protect our public infrastructure in the right of way. So any infrastructure that's buried underneath there, rather than being compacted down by people parking on top of it, will be protected. We also want to spread the message that these gravel parking areas are not allowed. So that's not really supposed to be allowed without any kind of permit. You can't just throw down stones so you can park on it. So off-street gravel parking in the right-of-way is not allowed, but it's very common. You see it in your neighborhoods. You probably see it in a lot of other neighborhoods. So the city aims to try to remove these parking areas on a voluntary basis through this program, helping to turn back the clock on harmful and unsightly past trends. And to ensure that cost is not a deterrent for residents who seek this restoration, Tiffin is seeking residents who would welcome the improvement and understand it to be permanent Though not everyone can afford the excavation work, it's going to be done through grant funds, and the city will assist in getting the work done. So it's going to be a win-win for the city and for the residents. Portion of the program is funded through the Inflation Reduction Act grant funding for the restoration of our tree lawns and protecting of our existing trees. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that. There will be an announcement coming out in the newspaper, I think, tomorrow or the next couple days, so that if people need more information, that'll be out there. And that concludes my report, Madam President.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Clerk of Council Ann Forrest.
No report, Madam President.
All right, and Director of Finance Kathy Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam President. I have several things this evening that I would like to call your attention to. The first that I didn't get a chance to mention in the committee of the whole was your budget ordinance 24-94. There is a new budget attachment for tonight. I had some updated figures from the engineer for some of the projects for next year, so there were some changes made. Most of them were reductions because we've continued to pay on other invoices for those projects. So what we needed to carry into 2025 has been reduced. So there've been a few changes there. I also made some changes when we went through the insurance sign-up. There were some employees chose different coverages, so I adjusted for those. Doesn't mean that we won't need to adjust again next year. Whenever we have somebody new, we might need to do that if they choose something different than the person had that left. So just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. There wasn't a whole lot of changes, but that ordinance will need to be amended so that you can pass the most current attachment.
Can I interrupt you for a second, Kathy?
And then,
Sorry, can I interrupt you? So do we do that under motions, or do we do that when it's read?
We can do it under motions.
Motions, okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's fine. And then, let's see, we talked a little bit about, in the committee of the whole, we have the ordinance 24-104. We are asking for suspension on that. That is the credit card ordinance that we passed already. And we're just cleaning up some of the verbiage to make sure that we have the correct title for the compliance officer. 24-106 is to appropriate the amount that we need for the land purchase for the HRT facility that we'll be building. And then 24-107 is the end of your budget changes, which we always have. All of those will be under suspension, and it's just because we don't know what all of them are. We continue to make payments on things, so it's a moving target, so to speak. And now we're out of time to figure those out, and I have them at this point what they need to be. And then I also have the November finance report for you, but did you have any questions on any of those before I read you the report?
Member Reesner?
Mine is more for the law director, so I got to do an amend on 94 under motions.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, so the November financial report. Total receipts for the month were $5,785,870.39. Total expenses for the month were $7,104,360.65. General fund unencumbered balance is $6,156,171.58. Income tax receipts for November 2024 were $879,634.25. When comparing that to November of 2023, we were up $55,478.64 for the month. Year-to-date, we are up 5%. The portion of income tax receipts that was transferred into Fund 215 for public streets for November was $109,239.16. The unexpended balance for all funds is $40,010,002.14, which is the same as the bank balances for the same time period. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Reesner?
Thank you, Madam President. I move to accept the finance director's report and bank reconciliation month ending November 2024.
Thank you. There is a motion to accept the finance director's report and bank reconciliation for the month ending in November. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And Director of Law, Zach Fowler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Just two quick items. As Councilmember Thacker gave in her report, you'd asked for legislation on the road and bridge levy. As I said at the committee hearing, working with our bond counsel at Squire Patton to just put that language together. They've helped do the last several. We're pretty close. The attorney and I were emailing before tonight, today, of just a few little tweaks. So I expect I'll have that for you on your first meeting in January. The other item then is we talked about doing some training for you all. I just wanted to kind of pin down when you guys wanted to do that. If you wanted that at the first meeting in January, if you wanted it at the second, is it at council meeting? Do you want to do a longer committee of the whole? It's your choice.
In my opinion, I think the committee of the whole makes sense if we did an extended committee of the whole meeting. I don't know that I have a preference on the first meeting in January or second, but it's challenging of not knowing exactly what the agenda will look like. But I think that's, I don't know if anybody has a different opinion. Okay. Let's do it at the first meeting. Extended committee of the whole. Okay.
Yeah, I'll take maybe as much time as you'll give me, but if like a half hour,
Okay.
I can probably squeeze it in. 6:50. Yeah.
Yeah, we could do, yeah, we could do 6:15 then. That works.
All right, that concludes my report.
January 6th, I think is the first one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. We are now under written communications.
We have mayor's request for legislation number 24-48, changes to police promotions.
Thank you. Mayor's request for legislation number 24-48 is assigned to the Personnel and Labor Relations Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-49, firefighter civil service regulation changes.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-49 is also assigned to Personnel and Labor Relations Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-50, appointment to boards and commissions.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-50, also assigned to Personnel and Labor Relations Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-51, appointment to Seneca County Board of Health.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-51 is assigned to Personnel and Labor Relations Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-52, the sale of Louisa K. Fast Park.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-52 is assigned to the Recreation and Public Property Committee.
And mayor's request for legislation number 24-53, Applejack Park Project.
Mayor's request for legislation 24-53 is also assigned to the Recreation and Public Property Committee.
And last, Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-65 to amend the 2024 Budget Ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the WPCC budget.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-65 is prepared this evening as ordinance 24-106.
That concludes the written communications.
Okay, thank you. We are now under oral communications. Anyone wishing to address council may step to the podium, sign in, and direct their questions to myself. Right. We are now under motions. Councilmember Reesner.
Is it 94 and 107?
It's just
Just
2494.
24, okay. Motion to amend, Madam President, the ordinance 2024-94.
Due to budget adjustments.
Budget, yeah.
There's a motion to amend ordinance 24-94 due to adjustments in the budget. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I think we'll do a roll call vote on that since it's amending an ordinance. Or can I do a voice vote?
You can do a voice.
Okay, awesome. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Motion carries. Thank you. Are there any other motions this evening? All right, we are now under resolutions and ordinances.
Resolution number 2024-43, introduced by John Kaler, a resolution of the Tiffin City Council adopting the federally approved Seneca County All-Hazard Mitigation Plan of 2025 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 24-43. Councilmember Hayes.
Yeah, I'd like to motion for immediate passage of Resolution 2024-43, suspending council's 3-reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion for suspension of council's 3-reading rule and immediate passage of Resolution 24-43. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Hayes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to Administrator John Spar for getting this to us quickly. We need to pass this tonight so that John Spar can, and the county can submit this to FEMA as soon as possible. The quicker they do it, the better chance they get to basically, I'm going to butcher this maybe, have it approved by the Ohio EMA rather than go to a regional office in Chicago, which takes months of time. And the sooner it can get approved by FEMA, then we can start writing grants against it. And I think that was about it. So that's
pretty good.
yeah.
Awesome.
And I'm here for any questions you might have further. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension. Oh, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's all right. Oh, this is something that we do every 5 years and such and everything like that. Whenever we do this, when we renew this and comes around every 5 years. And that plan, it's very detailed. It's very well written. That was, I took me days to get through it, but like preparing for any eventuality or anything like that, you know, it's you seeing it in writing. They've thought through it all. It was very well done.
So thank you for that. I didn't miss anyone else, did I? Okay. All right, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Resolution 24-43 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Amended ordinance number 2024-94, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance to budget and make appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Tiffin for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2025, and ending December 31, 2025.
Thank you. This is the third reading of amended ordinance 24-94. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for passage of amended ordinance 2024-94.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of amended ordinance 24-94. Is there a second? Councilmember Jones.
I second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Awesome. Seeing none, we can vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-94 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Amended ordinance number 2024-95, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending and restating ordinance number 23-95, the city pay ordinance, to establish appropriate rates of compensation for certain city employees to comply with the state of Ohio minimum wage law and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the third reading of amended ordinance 24-95. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for passage of amended ordinance 2024-95.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of amended ordinance 24-95. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Amended ordinance 24-95 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 2024-96, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance amending the 2025 budget ordinance number 2024-94 to authorize the transfer of funds, the payment of bond and loan principal and interest, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 24-96. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for passage of ordinance 2024-96.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of ordinance 24-96. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-96 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 2024-97, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance amending the 2025 budget ordinance number 2024-94 to authorize the transfer of funds from the 101 General Fund to the 242 Park and Recreation Fund and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 24-97. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for passage of ordinance 2024-97.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of ordinance 24-97. Is there a second? Councilmember Jones.
I second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-97 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 2024-98, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending the 2025 budget ordinance number 2024-94 to authorize the transfer of funds from the 552 Sewer Revenue Fund to the 557 Combined Sewer Separation Fund and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 24-98. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for passage of ordinance 2024-98.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of ordinance 24-98. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-98 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 2024-99, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance amending the 2025 budget ordinance number 2024-94 to authorize the transfer of funds from the 101 General Fund to the 331 Capital Improvements Fund and declaring an emergency.
This is the third reading of ordinance 24-99. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for passage of ordinance 2024-99.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of ordinance 24-99. Is there a second? Councilmember Hayes.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Right, we will first vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-99 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 2024-104, introduced by Cheyenne Thacker, an ordinance to amend section 135.14I of the codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
I think we skipped over ordinance 24-100. Correct? Yep.
I wonder if it's stuck to this. Yes, I'm stuck to the other one.
That's okay.
Sorry. Okay, back to ordinance number 2024-100, introduced by John Hayes, an ordinance conforming the boundaries of the city of Tiffin and Clinton and Hopewell townships.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 24-100. Councilmember Hayes.
A motion for passage of ordinance 2024-100.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of ordinance 24-100. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Law Director.
just as a reminder, what you're doing here is you're taking the city boundaries that have now expanded after several annexations, and you're going to authorize me to petition the Seneca County Commissioners to have Clinton and Hopewell Township boundaries match the city boundaries after those annexations. So after this, I'll take that to the county. They essentially have to approve that, and that'll just line those township boundaries up with the city's boundaries. Last time we did this was 2005, so it's a little overdue. It's just time after we did this last annexation to get this done.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? All right, we will vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Reesner,
Yes.
Thacker,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
and Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-100 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 2024-104, introduced by Cheyenne Thacker, an ordinance to amend section 135.14I of the codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-104. Councilmember Thacker.
I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-104, suspending city council's 3 reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion to suspend council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 24-104. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Thacker.
Yeah, this is just to update our ordinance to what we are actually currently practicing right now. So previous ordinance mentioned position that we currently don't have filled, and so instead, we're going to correct it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Reesner,
Yes.
Thacker,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
and Herniman.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Reesner,
Yes.
Thacker,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
and Herniman.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Reesner,
Yes.
Thacker,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
and Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-104 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 2024-105, introduced by Cheyenne Thacker, an ordinance authorizing and directing the city administrator to prepare plans and specifications, advertise for and receive bids, recommend and execute a contract for the Court Street Streetscape Project, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-105.
Ordinance number 2024-106, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the WPCC budget.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-106. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-106, suspending city council's reading rule.
Thank you. There is a motion for suspension of council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 24-106. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. This is so that the city can purchase the HRT, which stands for High Rate Treatment land, and they got to get this passed before the closing. The amount we're talking here is $405,000, and this is the 552 sewer fund.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Herniman.
The law director, he got it for $398. The closing tomorrow is what it was.
Yeah, thank you
So
for
we saved
mentioning
some money.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's just when we had the request, we didn't know what the actual closing amount would be. Since we had sent in the request, we were just told that the net amount will be $398,000 and some change. So whatever's unused will just revert back into the budget or the fund.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Reesner,
Yes.
Thacker,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
and Herniman.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Reesner?
Yes.
Thacker?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-106 passes with a vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 2024-107, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance amending the 2024 Budget Ordinance 23-94 to make year-end budget adjustments, approve necessary transfers, and declare an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-107. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-107, suspending city council's reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion for suspension of council's 3-reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 24-107. Is there a second? Councilmember Jones.
I second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Reesner.
This is for the year-end budget adjustments, mostly reductions, and it also reflects the mid-year wage changes, and this type of ordinance comes up every year at this time.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Oh my gosh, Kathy, Finance Director. Sorry.
I just wanted to mention one thing. What's in your packet, there was only one more that I had to add, and so that was part of the amended change, the memo change that came out. I had to add one for the Parks Department. We found out that there were incorrect meter reads on the pool for the water bill. We got a huge water bill that came in, and so we were trying to deal with that, but we want to make sure that we're not late in paying the bill because they were saying they were going to shut the water off or, things like that when you don't pay on time. So we decided we would go ahead and appropriate the funds, and if we don't get a new updated bill with the correct amount in time, we'll just pay that, and then they'll give us a credit.
Got it. Thank you. Got to watch out for those meter readers. All right. If there's no other discussion, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Reesner?
Yes.
Thacker?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Reesner?
Yes.
Thacker?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 5-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Reesner?
Yes.
Thacker?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
And Herniman.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-107 passes with a vote of 5-0.
And that concludes the legislation.
Thank you. A lot of legislation tonight. Right, we are now under other business. Councilmember Hayes.
I'd like to announce a Personnel and Labor Relations Committee meeting will be held in City Chambers on Monday, December 30th at 5:15 PM. We will be discussing Mayor's request for legislation 24-48, 24-49, 24-50, and 24-51, and any other business that comes before the committee.
Thank you. The other announcement I'll make is the first meeting in January, January 6th, we will be having an adjusted time for our committee of the whole, starting at 6:15 PM in order for the council members to go through required training by the law director or compliance officer.
You said required. I'm not really requiring it.
Well, strongly encouraged. I get it. Is there any other business to come before council this evening? I can't decide on the room tonight, sorry. Nick.
Thank you. I just wanted to say this is our last council meeting of the year, barring any committee meetings, but I wanted to thank you all for being here. Public service is not an easy task, but I appreciate all of you stepping up. We're all ending our first year as this council. First year as the law director, first year as the mayor. So I wanted to thank you on my behalf for all of your support, all of you with your support for the mayor, myself, and the finance director, and all of the city department heads. We couldn't do what we do without all of you and your support of us. So thank you to everyone here.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo all of those comments. I intended to, say something similar in the sense of this was obviously a very new group for the majority of council and administration, and I think we had a fantastic year. I think we did really well as a council and as a body, and so thank you all for thank you all for your support and your patience, as well as we worked through some new learnings this year. So excited for 2025 and kicking off the year with some required training.
Absolutely. I'd like to echo that sentiment as well. Thank you all for a great year. I appreciate everything that you all do, and like all the work that you put in and going to those meetings on site in the rain and the wind and all the things that a lot of people don't notice that you do. So, and reading through the entire mitigation plan, which can take days, and staying up to date on all the ordinances. So I appreciate all that work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Does anyone else have anything? All right, well, if nothing else, we can adjourn. Thank you, guys.